Ladies and gentlemen, we live in a world filled with opportunities, knowledge, and limitless possibilities. Yet, despite all the tools available, many of us still make foolish choices. The truth is, intelligence is not just about IQ, it's about common sense, decision making, and learning from our mistakes. So today I say to you, try not to be stupid if you can. When people hear the word stupid, they often think it means someone who lacks intelligence or has a low IQ. But in reality, stupidity has little to do with how smart you are on paper. There are plenty of highly intelligent individuals who make incredibly foolish choices. Just there are people with average intelligence who live wisely and successfully. What truly defines stupidity is poor decision making, consistently making choices that are harmful, irrational, or counterproductive. It's the refusal to think things through before acting. It's allowing emotions, impulses, or biases to override logic and good judgment. It's knowing that something is wrong or unwise but doing it anyway. For example, consider someone who repeatedly spends more money than they earn, despite knowing it will lead to debt and financial stress. Or someone who drives recklessly because they think accidents only happen to other people. These are not mistakes due to a lack of intelligence, they are conscious decisions that ignore the lessons of experience and reality. Another example is ignoring advice or warnings from people who are more knowledgeable. If someone tells you touching fire will burn you, but you do it anyway just to prove a point, that's not bravery, that's stupidity. It's a failure to learn from the experiences of others and an unwillingness to accept wisdom that could save you from harm. Stupidity is also seen in the way people handle relationships and communication. If you constantly push away those who care about you or refuse to listen when someone is trying to help, you're not being strong, you're being foolish. Many friendships, careers, and even marriages have been destroyed not because of a lack of love or talent, but because of repeated poor choices and stubbornness. Making better decisions doesn't require genius-level intelligence. It requires self-awareness, patience, and the ability to pause and reflect before acting. Smart people make dumb decisions too, but the difference is that they recognize their mistakes and work to correct them. The truly foolish never learn, they repeat the same errors and expect different results. So, the next time you're about to make a choice, ask yourself, am I thinking logically or am I acting out of impulse, ego, or ignorance? If you can master this, you're already miles ahead of those who refuse to learn. One of the biggest signs of stupidity isn't a lack of knowledge, it's the refusal to acknowledge facts and learn from past mistakes. Life constantly provides us with lessons, whether through personal experience or the wisdom of others. Yet, some people continue to ignore clear evidence, dismiss reality, and repeat the same errors over and over again, expecting a different outcome. Think about it. How many times have we seen people refuse to listen to advice, only to end up regretting it later? It happens all the time. Someone might be told repeatedly that smoking is bad for their health, but they continue thinking, it won't happen to me. Someone else might constantly spend money recklessly, even after falling into debt multiple times, believing that this time will be different. These behaviors don't stem from a lack of information, but from a refusal to accept and act on it. History, both personal and social, is full of lessons that we can learn from. The downfall of great civilizations, the mistakes made by leaders, and even failures in business and relationships often follow predictable patterns. Yet, people continue to walk the same path toward destruction, ignoring the warning signs. If you touch fire and get burned, that's a painful lesson. But if you keep touching the fire thinking, maybe this time it won't burn, that's not just ignorance, it's foolishness. A major reason people ignore facts and repeat mistakes is stubbornness and ego. Nobody likes to admit they're wrong, but refusing to acknowledge a mistake doesn't make it disappear. It only guarantees that you will suffer the same consequences again. Some people would rather defend their bad choices than face the reality that they need to change. They make excuses, shift blame, or convince themselves that the problem isn't as bad as it seems. But the truth is, Ignoring reality doesn't make it any less real. Another issue is living in denial. Many people choose to believe only what they want to hear, ignoring evidence that contradicts their personal beliefs. This is why people fall for scams, continue toxic relationships, or support bad decisions despite overwhelming proof that things won't end well. Reality doesn't adjust itself to suit our feelings. It doesn't care if the truth is uncomfortable, it remains the truth, whether we accept it or not. The smartest people in the world are not the ones who never make mistakes, but the ones who learn from them. Every mistake is an opportunity to improve, but only if you recognize it and make the necessary changes. On the other hand, those who refuse to learn are doomed to repeat their failures, often in worse ways than before. One of the clearest signs of immaturity and foolishness is the habit of constantly blaming others instead of taking responsibility for one's own actions. Life is full of challenges, mistakes, and failures, but how we respond to them defines our character. Smart people acknowledge their role in situations, learn from them, and grow. Foolish people, on the other hand, find someone else to blame, avoiding accountability and repeating the same mistakes over and over again. Blaming others is easy. It takes the pressure off, makes us feel better temporarily, and allows us to avoid the uncomfortable process of self-reflection. But while it may offer short-term relief, it leads to long-term failure. When we refuse to accept responsibility, we give up the power to change our circumstances. If everything is always someone else's fault, then we never have to improve, learn, or make better decisions. This mindset keeps people stuck in the same problems for years, wondering why nothing ever changes. We see this behavior in every part of life. In workplaces, employees blame their bosses for not getting promoted instead of improving their skills or work ethic. In relationships, people blame their partners for every issue instead of looking at their own behavior and communication. In school, students blame their teachers for bad grades rather than acknowledging that they didn't study enough. Even in society, people blame the government, the economy, or bad luck for their failures, rather than examining the choices they made that led them where they are. Taking responsibility doesn't mean beating yourself up over mistakes, it means recognizing where you went wrong and figuring out how to do better next time. This is what separates successful people from those who stay stuck in the same cycles of failure. When something goes wrong, a smart person asks, "What could I have done differently?" A foolish person asks, "Who can I blame for this?" Blaming others also creates a victim mentality. When people see themselves as victims of their circumstances rather than active participants in their own lives, they become passive and powerless. They stop trying to improve because they believe everything is beyond their control. This attitude is dangerous because it leads to bitterness, resentment, and a lack of progress. Life is unfair, there's no denying that. But the people who succeed are the ones who take ownership of their actions and make the best of their situations, no matter how difficult they may be. Another major issue with blaming others is that it damages relationships. No one wants to be around someone who never takes responsibility and always points fingers. Whether in friendships, families, or workplaces, constant blame leads to distrust, resentment, and broken connections. People respect those who own up to their mistakes and work to correct them, but they lose patience with those who never admit fault. In the end, refusing to take responsibility is not just a bad habit, it's a barrier to growth. The moment we stop making excuses and start owning our actions, we take control of our lives. Those who continue to blame others will always stay trapped in the same mistakes, wondering why their problems never seem to go away. One of the most common yet dangerous mistakes people make is choosing short-term pleasure over long-term success. Life constantly presents us with choices. Do we take the easy, enjoyable path now, or do we make sacrifices for a better future? Foolish people chase immediate gratification without considering the consequences, while wise people understand that true success requires patience, discipline, and long-term thinking. This pattern can be seen in many aspects of life. Consider health and fitness. Eating junk food, skipping exercise, and staying up late watching TV all feel good in the moment. But over time, these habits lead to obesity, health issues, and low energy levels. On the other hand, maintaining a healthy diet, exercising regularly, and getting enough sleep may seem difficult at first, but they lead to a stronger, healthier body in the long run. The people who prioritize momentary pleasure often find themselves struggling with preventable health problems later in life. The same principle applies to finances. Many people spend money recklessly because it feels good to buy new things. They purchase expensive gadgets, designer clothes, and unnecessary luxuries, ignoring the fact that they are living paycheck to paycheck or going into debt. Meanwhile, those who practice financial discipline, saving, investing, and spending wisely may not enjoy instant gratification, but they set themselves up for long-term financial stability. Years down the road, the impulsive spender is drowning in debt, while the disciplined saver enjoys financial freedom. In education and career, short-term pleasure can be just as destructive. A student may choose to party instead of study, enjoy social media, instead of focusing on learning, or procrastinate instead of completing assignments. In the moment, these choices feel enjoyable, but when exams come or job opportunities arise, the unprepared student suffers the consequences. Similarly, in the workplace, employees who prioritize laziness and comfort over skill building and hard work often find themselves stuck in the same low-paying jobs, wondering why they aren't progressing. Relationships also suffer when people prioritize immediate gratification over long-term stability. Cheating, lying, or being selfish may provide short-term satisfaction, but it destroys trust and leads to broken relationships. Instead of investing time and effort into building strong, meaningful connections, some people chase momentary pleasure only to find themselves lonely and regretful later. One of the biggest reasons people fall into the trap of short-term pleasure is a lack of self-control. The ability to delay gratification is one of the strongest indicators of future success. Studies have shown that people who can resist temptation and work toward long-term goals tend to be more successful in nearly every area of life. Yet many people still choose the easy way out, believing they can enjoy life now and deal with the consequences later. However, life doesn't work that way. Every choice we make today shapes our future. The habits we build now determine the kind of life we will have years from now. Those who constantly seek instant pleasure will eventually pay the price, while those who make sacrifices and stay disciplined will reap the rewards in the long run. One of the greatest obstacles to wisdom is ego, the belief that we already know everything, that we are always right, and that we don't need to learn from others. Ego blinds us to reality, keeps us from improving, and leads us to make foolish decisions. On the other hand, true wisdom requires humility, the ability to admit when we are wrong, to recognize that there is always more to learn, and to seek knowledge from those who are wiser than us. Ego manifests in many ways. Some people refuse to accept advice, even when it comes from those with more experience. They believe they know better even when they don't have the facts, skills, or understanding necessary to make the best decisions. This kind of arrogance leads to repeated mistakes, unnecessary failures, and lost opportunities. A humble person, however, listens carefully, asks questions, and values learning from others. They understand that seeking knowledge is not a sign of weakness but a path to strength. Another way ego blinds people is through the fear of admitting individuals. Many individuals go to great lengths to defend their decisions instead of simply acknowledging that they were wrong. This is often seen in leadership, where bosses or managers refuse to listen to employees because they don't want to appear weak. It happens in relationships where people argue endlessly rather than apologize. It even happens in personal growth, where people refuse to change their ways even when they know deep down that they should. The irony is that refusing to admit fault doesn't make someone look strong, it makes them look foolish and insecure. Ego also prevents people from accepting criticism. No one likes to be told they are wrong, but constructive criticism is one of the most valuable tools for self-improvement. A wise person welcomes feedback even when it is uncomfortable because they understand that it helps them grow. A person ruled by ego, however, becomes defensive, angry, or dismissive. Instead of using criticism as a stepping stone to improvement, they see it as a personal attack and shut down the opportunity to learn. One of the most dangerous aspects of ego is that it creates overconfidence. When someone believes they are always right, they take unnecessary risks, underestimate challenge or potential dangers. History is full of stories of leaders, investors, and individuals who made reckless decisions because they overestimated their abilities. On the other hand, humble individuals acknowledge their limitations and prepare carefully. They don't rush into situations thinking they are invincible, they plan, learn, and proceed wisely. Ego also destroys relationships. No one enjoys being around a person who always acts like they are superior, never listens, and refuses to admit fault. Friendships, marriages, and even professional relationships suffer when one person's pride gets in the way of communication and mutual respect. Humility, however, strengthens relationships. It allows people to apologize, to compromise, and to learn from one another. A humble person doesn't need to prove they are the smartest in the room, they focus on understanding, connection, and growth. The most intelligent and successful people in the world are not those who believe they know everything, but those who constantly seek knowledge. They read, they ask questions, they listen, and they remain open to new perspectives. They do not let their ego dictate their actions, they embrace humility as a tool for lifelong learning. One of the biggest mistakes people make is talking too much without thinking things through. Many believe that speaking louder, faster, or more frequently makes them appear smarter, more important, or more in control. However, in reality, those who speak without thought often expose their ignorance, say things they later regret, and fail to understand the world around them. On the other hand, those who practice active listening gain knowledge, make wiser decisions, and earn the respect of those around them. Talking without thinking is a common problem in everyday conversations. Some people interrupt others mid-sentence, eager to share their opinions before even fully understanding what is being said. Others dominate conversations, believing that the more they talk, the more intelligent they will seem. However, what they fail to realize is that constantly speaking does not equate to wisdom. True intelligence comes from absorbing information, analyzing it, and responding thoughtfully, not from rushing to be the loudest voice in the room. Listening, on the other hand, is a skill that allows people to learn, connect, and make better choices. When we genuinely listen to others without thinking of how to respond, without interrupting, and without dismissing their perspectives, we open ourselves to new ideas and insights. This is especially important when dealing with disagreements. Many arguments escalate simply because people refuse to listen. Instead of trying to understand the other person's point of view, they focus on proving themselves right. But wise individuals know that listening carefully can help resolve conflicts, improve relationships, and even change minds. Another critical aspect of listening is that it helps people avoid embarrassing themselves. How often have we seen someone blurt out an opinion without knowing all the facts, only to look foolish when they realize they were wrong? This happens in personal conversations, social media debates, and even professional settings. A well-informed person takes the time to listen, gather information, and reflect before they speak. They do not rush to judgment or let emotions control their words. Instead, they choose their words wisely, ensuring that what they say adds value rather than noise. In professional environments, listening is one of the most powerful tools for success. Employees who listen carefully to instructions make fewer mistakes. Leaders who listen to their teams create stronger, more productive workplaces. Business people who listen to their customers provide better products and services. The ability to listen not only enhances communication but also leads to better decision-making. People who talk without thinking often miss critical details, while good listeners absorb information that helps them succeed. Listening is also essential for personal relationships. Many friendships, marriages, and family bonds are damaged because one or both parties fail to listen. When someone feels unheard, they feel disrespected, unimportant, and frustrated. On the other hand, a good listener makes people feel valued and understood. They give their full attention, show empathy, and respond thoughtfully. This builds trust, strengthens connections, and prevents misunderstandings. Another benefit of listening is that it teaches patience and self-control. Many people feel the urge to jump into conversations immediately, whether to correct someone, share their opinion, or steer the discussion in their direction. However, those who learn to pause, take a breath, and truly process what is being said develop emotional intelligence. They understand that not every situation requires a response, and sometimes silence is more powerful than words. In the digital age, where information is constantly shared at lightning speed, people are quicker than ever to voice their opinions without very facts. Social media, for example, is full of individuals who argue, criticize, and spread misinformation because they don't take the time to listen and learn. This reckless behavior can ruin reputations, create unnecessary conflicts, and spread ignorance instead of knowledge. The smartest and most successful people in the world have mastered the art of listening before speaking. They do not rush to react but take the time to observe, learn, and process information before forming an opinion. This allows them to make sound decisions, avoid unnecessary conflicts, and continuously expand their knowledge. Instead of trying to be the loudest in the room, they focus on being the wisest because, in the end, those who listen will always understand more than those who simply talk. The people we spend time with have a tremendous impact on our thoughts, decisions, and overall direction in life. Whether we realize it or not, our behaviors, beliefs, and habits are shaped by the individuals around us. If we surround ourselves with foolish, negative, or reckless people, we are likely to adopt their mindset and fall into the same bad patterns. On the other hand, if we choose to be around wise, ambitious, and positive individuals, we set ourselves up for growth and success. The saying, "you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with," holds a lot of truth. If you constantly associate with people who are careless, irresponsible, and unmotivated, influence will eventually affect your own mindset and behavior. If your closest friends lack ambition, engage in destructive habits, or always make excuses for their failures, chances are you will adopt a similar approach to life. It's difficult to rise above negativity when you are constantly surrounded by it. One of the biggest mistakes people make is choosing friends based on convenience rather than quality. Many stick with toxic or unmotivated people simply because they have known them for a long time or because they fear being alone. But loyalty should never come at the cost of personal growth. Staying in the wrong social circles can limit opportunities, stunt personal development, and lead to poor decision making. Peer pressure is another way that the wrong people can lead to foolishness. Humans naturally want to fit in, and many end up making bad choices just to be accepted by their social group. For example, if you are surrounded by people who engage in reckless spending, partying, or unhealthy behaviors, you may feel pressure to do the same, even if you know better. Over time, what starts as small compromises can lead to major life setbacks. Toxic relations don't just exist in friendships, they can also be found in family, romantic relationships, and even professional settings. Some people stay in unhealthy relationships because they fear change even when the relationship is clearly damaging. A negative, manipulative, or emotionally draining partner can hold someone back from achieving their full potential. Likewise, a workplace filled with gossip, negativity, and laziness can sap motivation and prevent growth. Surrounding yourself with the wrong people doesn't just lead to bad habits, it also limits your mindset and ambitions. If you constantly hear people complaining about how hard life is, blaming others for their problems, and making excuses for their failures, it's easy to start adopting that same mentality. Instead of striving for more, you begin to accept mediocrity as normal. In contrast, being around driven, intelligent, and forward-thinking individuals inspire self-improvement and ambition. The right people will challenge you, encourage you, and push you to become better. They will offer constructive criticism, share valuable knowledge, and celebrate your achievements. Being in a positive and motivated environment fosters creativity, confidence, and discipline. Wise individuals actively seek out mentors, role models, and successful peers because they understand that growth happens in the company of those who push them to be better. Changing your social circle is not always easy. It often requires difficult decisions, including distancing yourself from people who are not aligned with your goals. However, growth requires sacrifice. If you want to make better choices, achieve success, and develop wisdom, you must be willing to step away from those who drag you down and move toward those who uplift you. It's important to regularly ask yourself, are the people around me helping me grow, or are they keeping me stuck in the same place? The answer to this question can reveal whether you are on the right path or whether it's time to make changes in your social environment. Emotions are a natural and essential part of being human. They help us connect with others, experience joy, and navigate challenges. However, when emotions take complete control over decision-making without logic or reasoning, they often lead to poor choices, unnecessary conflicts, and long-term regret. A wise person understands the importance of balancing emotion with rational thinking, while a foolish person allows their emotions to dictate their actions impulsively. One of the biggest dangers of reacting emotionally without logic is acting in the heat of the moment. When something upsets or frustrates us, the immediate urge is to react, whether it's shouting in anger, making a rash decision, or sending a message we later regret. However, reacting without thinking can cause damage that is difficult to undo. How many relationships have been ruined by words spoken in anger? How many careers have suffered because of impulsive decisions? The ability to pause, reflect, and approach situations logically can prevent a moment of emotion from turning into a lifetime of regret. Take, for example, a workplace situation. If an employee receives criticism from their boss and reacts emotionally, getting defensive, arguing, or quitting on impulse, they may miss out on valuable feedback that could have helped them improve. In contrast, a rational person would take a step back, analyze the criticism objectively, and use it as a tool for growth. The ability to manage emotions and think before reacting is a skill that leads to success in both professional and personal life. Another common way emotional reactions lead to foolishness is through impulse decisions. People often buy things they don't need because they feel an emotional high in the moment, only to regret it later when they realize they wasted money. Similarly, some people quit their jobs in a fit of frustration, end important relationships because of temporary emotions, or make big life decisions based on fear rather than logic. These impulsive choices can cause long-term damage, all because the person failed to take a step back and think logically. Anger is one of the most destructive emotions when not controlled. Many people lose friendships, jobs, and even battles because they let the anger drive their actions. Instead of cooling down and handling conflicts with maturity, they lash out, say hurtful things, or engage in reckless behavior. On the other hand, wise individuals understand the power of emotional intelligence. They recognize their anger but choose to respond in a way that leads to resolution rather than destruction. Fear is another emotion that clouds judgment. People who allow fear to control them often miss out on great opportunities. They don't take risks in their careers, avoid trying new things, and remain stuck in their comfort zones. Fear convinces them that failure is the worst outcome, when in reality, never trying is even worse. Successful individuals feel fear, but do not let it dictate their choices. They evaluate risk logically and take action when necessary. Another harmful emotional reaction is jealousy and envy. When people let envy take over, they start making decisions out of competition or resentment rather than focusing on their own growth. Instead of improving themselves, they obsess over what others have This leads to destructive behaviors such as gossiping, sabotaging relationships, or making poor financial decisions just to keep up with others. Rational thinking helps people focus on their own goals rather than being consumed by comparisons. The key to avoiding emotional-driven mistakes is learning to pause before reacting. Taking a deep breath, stepping away from the situation, and thinking logically can make a huge difference. Instead of immediately responding to an emotional trigger, a wise person asks themselves, am I reacting based on facts or just my feelings? Will this decision benefit me in the long run? If I were calmer, would I still make the same choice? By incorporating logical thinking into emotional situations, people can avoid unnecessary drama, regretful actions, and poor decisions that could have been prevented with just a little patience. The most intelligent and successful individuals do not ignore their emotions, but they ensure that logic and reasoning guide their final decisions. One of the clearest signs of immaturity and foolishness is the habit of avoiding responsibility. Many people go through life on others for their failures, making excuses for their mistakes and running away from their obligations. They convince themselves that their problems are always someone else's fault, their parents, their teachers, their boss, the government, or even bad luck. However, the truth is that avoiding responsibility doesn't make problems disappear, it makes them worse. In contrast, those who take accountability for their actions, decisions, and outcomes are the ones who learn, grow, and ultimately succeed. A common way people avoid responsibility is by making excuses. Instead of acknowledging their own role in a failure, they shift the blame onto external factors. For example, a student who fails an exam might say the teacher was unfair instead of admitting that they didn't study enough. A person struggling financially might say, the economy is terrible instead of recognizing that they need to manage their money better. While external challenges do exist, wise individuals understand that they are responsible for how they respond to those challenges. Making excuses might feel good in the moment, but in the long run it keeps people stuck in the same cycle of failure. Another way people avoid responsibility is through procrastination. Many individuals delay taking action because they don't want to deal with difficult tasks, whether it's working on their health, improving their career, or fixing personal issues. They tell themselves, I'll start tomorrow, but tomorrow turns into next week, next month, or even years of inaction. This kind of avoidance leads to missed opportunities, wasted potential, and deep regret later in life. Meanwhile, responsible people take initiative. They understand that success requires effort and that delaying important tasks only makes life harder in the future. Responsibility also plays a huge role in relationships. Many people damage friendships, marriages, or family bonds because they refuse to take ownership of their actions. When conflicts arise, instead of admitting their mistakes, they blame the other person, make excuses, or refuse to apologize. Over time, this kind of behavior leads to broken trust, resentment, and loneliness. In contrast, people who take responsibility for their words and actions build stronger, more meaningful relationships. They own up to their mistakes, work on self-improvement, and show others that they can be trusted. In the professional world, avoiding responsibility can destroy careers. Employees who fail to meet deadlines, blame coworkers for their mistakes, or refuse to take initiative will never progress. Employers value individuals who take ownership of their work, admit when they are wrong, and actively seek solutions instead of excuses. People who avoid responsibility often find themselves stuck in low-paying jobs, constantly complaining about their situation but never making the necessary changes to improve it. Financial irresponsibility is another common example. Many people struggle with money because they spend recklessly, fail to save, and don't educate themselves on financial management. Instead of taking responsibility for their financial choices, they blame their circumstances, the economy, or even their upbringing. However, truly successful individuals recognize that financial stability requires discipline, smart decision making, and personal accountability. They make budgets, avoid unnecessary debt, and actively work towards financial independence instead of expecting someone else to rescue them. One of the biggest dangers of avoiding responsibility is that it leads to a victim mentality, the belief that life is happening to rather than because of you. People with a victim mindset see themselves as powerless. They wait for others to solve their problems, expect life to magically improve, and refuse to take action to change their situation. However, the truth is that no one is coming to save you. If you want a better life, you have to take responsibility for creating it. The moment a person stops avoiding responsibility and starts owning their actions, their life begins to change. They realize that while they can't control everything, they can control how they respond to challenges. They stop blaming others, stop making excuses, and start taking action. This shift in mindset leads to greater confidence, success, and fulfillment, while those who continue avoiding responsibility often find themselves filled with regret for the regret they wasted at the end of the day. Life is a series of choices, and the quality of your life depends on the quality of those choices. Choosing wisdom over ignorance, responsibility over excuses, and growth over stagnation is what separates successful, fulfilled individuals from those who remain stuck in a cycle of regret and mediocrity. Nobody is perfect, and we all make mistakes. But the key is learning from them, improving, and making better decisions moving forward. If you want to avoid being foolish, start by thinking before you speak, surrounding yourself with the right people, managing your emotions, and taking full responsibility for your actions. Remember, intelligence isn't about knowing everything, it's about being willing to learn, adapt, and make thoughtful choices. The world already has enough reckless, irresponsible, and thoughtless people. Don't be one of them. Instead, strive to be wise, accountable, and constantly improving. So try not to be stupid if you can, because in the end, the only person who can truly shape your future is you.